हमारे पास ओरिजिनल रास्ता जो था वही हमारा रास्ता है। ये मैनिफेस्टो कांग्रेस पार्टी ने नहीं बनाया है, ये मैनिफेस्टो हिंदुस्तान की जनता ने बनाया है। हमने सिर्फ इसको लिखा है, जो किसानों ने हमें बताया, खारगे जी को बताया, मुझे बताया, बाकी नेताओं को बताया, वो हमने लिखा है। चाहे वो रोजगार की बात हो, चाहे वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट लेबर की बात हो, हजारों लोगों से बात करके हमने ये हिंदुस्तान की आवाज है, ये लिखी है।
हमारा ये घोषणा पत्र देश के राजनीतिक इतिहास में न्याय के दस्तावेज के रूप में याद किया जाएगा। राहुल जी के नेतृत्व में चली भारत जोड़ो न्याय यात्रा में 5 पिलर्स पर ध्यान केंद्रित किया गया था। यात्रा के दौरान युवा न्याय, किसान न्याय, नारी न्याय, श्रमिक न्याय और हिस्सेदारी न्याय की घोषणा की गई थी। जहां कहीं भी हम गए, इन न्याय की बात हमने करी थी और इसकी गारंटी भी हमने दी है।
5 pillars of justice, 25 guarantees. That's the clarion call from the Congress party in its poll manifesto for the 2024 Lok Sabha elections. There are shades of 2019 and of 2004 in this manifesto, which the Congress hopes will bring it back to power after 10 years out of power. For a party that has ruled India for almost 50 years with center of left policies, the Congress poll manifesto is a new benchmark of sorts that could mean a new problem for India's fiscal balance. So is this manifesto going to be a huge problem for any party to match up to, or has the Congress, which says it has responded to the voice of the people, introduced a new element in freebies and ravedenomics? Joining me on the show today are 4 stellar voices on this debate. Aditi Phadnis, the political editor of the Business Standard newspaper; Tushar Gupta, a political commentator who has been tweeting quite a bit ever since the poll manifesto was published; Amrit Gill, spokesperson of the Congress party; and Santosh Mehrotra, visiting professor of economics at the University of Bath in the United Kingdom. Thank you very much for joining us. I want to come to you, Professor Mehrotra, straight away for trying to give our viewers and setting the context of the cost of these promises. And before you answer, just to pick up some of the major promises under those 25 guarantees, which have been divided in 5 different buckets: a nationwide caste census, a probe into the electoral bond scam, guaranteed job to youth with 1 lakh salary, 1 woman in every Indian family to get 1 lakh per year, 400 rupees per day minimum wage to farmers, a minimum support price as per the Swaminathan report, scrapping the Agnipath scheme, raising the 50% cap on reservations, and a law for civil union for LGBTQIA couples. There are other promises, but let's keep the focus, Professor, on the economic ones and the likely impact.
Well, I don't think it's possible to come up with some magical number about how much this would cost in the first year. Everything depends on what proportion the cost will be of the GDP. And if the GDP growth rate returns to 8% per annum, which it has not been for the last 10 years, then it's perfectly possible. Secondly, it should be perfectly possible if you don't necessarily decide to live with a corporate tax cut from 30% to 25%. This government brought about for no rhyme or reason at all. So the bottom line is, as the manifesto rightly says, that had the economy been growing at 8% per annum, as it was between 2004 and 14, and which has come down by anywhere between 1 to 2 percentage points since then we would have already been a $5 trillion economy today. Or if in rupees, a 200 lakh crore economy as opposed to a 173 lakh crore economy that it is today. So the bottom line is, I can go into the specifics, for instance, the urban employment guarantee. So people might complain about how can you do an urban employment guarantee? Well, the fact of the matter is that if you have an urban employment guarantee, it'll cut down the expenditure on the rural employment guarantee. And I think your readers may or may not know this, that never in the history of the rural employment guarantee, and I used to run it, by the way, from the Planning Commission 15 years ago, so I know a little bit about the Manrega, that never in the history of Manrega has the demand for work been as high as it has been for the last 3 to 4 years. If you provide normal employment, which could be done if the economy was growing at 8%, or if you provided urban employment guarantee, then the demand for rural employment will come down. So accordingly, the fact of the matter is that all this is perfectly doable if you grow faster. But if you don't have the policies to ensure growth, the growth rate that the economy needs and has the potential to deliver, then you can start complaining from today about how much it's going to cost.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Aditi, Professor Mehrotra makes the point that it is perfectly doable if you are growing faster. The question to you, in addition to any estimates that you might have on early estimates on the likely cost, is, does this manifesto provide for growth? Is this a growth-oriented manifesto, or is it a redistribution manifesto that is aimed at somehow coming back to power? Aditi Phadnis.
Well, I just want to go back to what Professor Gaurav Vallabh, before he left the Congress and after he left the Congress, the points that he made. He made the point that after he left the Congress, that the Congress was committed to some pretty regressive anti-growth positions, and which is why he was leaving it. This manifesto does not talk about the tough decisions that the government has to take in the immediate future, issues like disinvestment, issues like bank privatization, issues like cutting down on the state as an employer. In fact, it emphasizes that the state has to be the biggest employer, and it emphasizes that the state has to hire more people. If you look at the bit on employment and the bit on the workforce. So I don't know. I think it's a mixture of growth and equity. It's a mixture of the things that the Congress has done in 91, as well as the things that the Congress did after 2004 and specifically in 2009. I don't have a figure because I'm not a trained economist, but I do know that some of the things that the manifesto says, for instance, like bringing the National Security Council and the National Security Advisor within the ambit of Parliament, are pretty good. I think that's a pretty progressive step, and nobody should have any objection to that, particularly against the background of all that has been happening in to do with the NSA. But there are other areas where there are serious problems. One is recruitment of soldiers in the Agnipath scheme. There are many who strongly disagree. There are other issues.
Aditi, since you mentioned, and before I go to the other two guests on the panel, I just want to read out for you viewers a study, because one of the questions is the impact of the likely impact if the Agnipath scheme were to be rolled back. A ORF paper that I have in my hand of August 2022 has a beautiful chart on 22-year time series savings, potential savings on salaries resulting from Agnipath. As we know, the Indian Defence Forces have a very large number of personnel. In fact, our pension bill recently crossed 1,20,000 crore. So the potential savings as estimated by that study are a very, very significant number. In fact, in 2022 alone, the estimate is 1,054 crore, and this goes up progressively. In 2024, it is estimated at 3,162 crore, and the total savings from 2022 to 2044 are estimated at close to 2,19,000 crore. So the question that I will take to Tushar first and then go to the Congress person, not going to the Congress person last, but I will get her to respond to all that has been said by the other panelists. So just hang in there. That's the reason, Amrit, I am coming to you last. But Tushar, to you first. Would therefore the question be that 2,19,000 crore is the possible fiscal negative impact only on account of one of the 25 guarantees that the Congress is promising? Respond to that.
Good evening, Siddharth. Look, I wouldn't be that worried if you're getting into the fiscal debate about the expenditure on the defense. That's, I think, one of the priority sectors for any government. And I wouldn't actually, if I'm prioritizing in terms of where I want to spend, I wouldn't look at defense first. What I will look at is one of the two big promises of the Rahul Gandhi manifesto, the Congress manifesto. One of them is rupees 1 lakh annually to the poorest of the poor households. Now, the manifesto was a good opportunity to clarify or to explain how these families or households would be decided. Even if we assume 20 crore families in India and we expect them to cover the bottom 20% on the economic pyramid, we're looking at 4 crore families. That's 4 lakh crore rupee expenditure every year. The other big promise is legalizing MSP. Now, that is where the real headache is if we talk in fiscal terms. Even if we look at FY20, the value of the agricultural produce was rupees 10 lakh crore. The produce that comes under the MSP purview, the 23 odd crops. We're not talking about the total agricultural produce, just the MSP crops produced was rupees 10 lakh crore. Now, if Rahul Gandhi says he wants to legalize MSP, there are two ways of going about it. Either the state procures at 100%, which doesn't happen. The state procurement is more or less around 25%. But even if he's procuring at 100%, that's rupees 10 lakh crore expenditure annually for the government. Now, that's impossible. That's fiscally impossible. I won't even say difficult, it's impossible. The second more viable solution is he makes a law or he complements it with a law where anyone buying from the farmers has to buy it in MSP. Now, that creates another set of problems that if a private enterprise has to buy the crops on MSP, the price dictated by the government, and these are inflated prices, we all know that. Given their quality, given the kind of ecological conditions that persist in these states, particularly Punjab and Haryana, these are inflated costs for their quality. So who is eventually going to bear the burden of these inflated costs? It's going to be the consumer. So either you're looking to pass on the inflated cost to the consumer, or you're looking as the government to spend more. Now, even if we look at two of Rahul Gandhi's schemes, I won't count the defense expenditure if they discontinue Agnipath. I'm looking at the household rupees 1 lakh for the poorest of the poor households and legalizing MSP. That alone will make up for 1/3 of the center's budget expenditure annually. Where's the money going to come from? Is he going to cut it away from defense, from infrastructure, from other welfare programs? I mean, it's all good to make promises, but you either need to clarify how you're going to go about them. Are you going to increase taxes? Mr. Mehrotra made a point about the corporate tax. Let's say the corporate tax comes back. Let's assume for the sake of argument. That will also give the government an additional rupees 1 lakh or at best 2 lakh crore rupees a year. That doesn't make up for, again, rupees 15 lakh crore additional expenditure the Congress manifesto is talking about. So my simple question, I understand the intent. I give them the intent. They might have good intent. Where is the money going to come from?
Okay, let's take that question. No, that's a fair point. Let's take that question to Amrit Gill, who's been listening to everyone. 15 lakh crore additional expenditure, Amrit Gill. This is what Tushar is saying. Professor Mehrotra also said hard to sort of come to very accurate estimates right away. But it's very clear. It's one-way street as far as spending is concerned. If the Congress were to come to power. I just gave you a very solid number about Agnipath, and if we were to take 5 years starting from 2024, even that number is very, very significant. So where is the money going to come for all these grandiose promises that have been made? Please respond.
First of all, like starting my debate, I am thankful to all the seniors because this is for the first time I'm here on economic forum, and I will be talking from the point of view of a consumer first and a citizen of India first, because why the government is being formed, why the government is of the people, for the people, and by the people. If the government is making money or levying some taxes, all the taxes, what for? For the people, for the citizens of the country, for making their life social, economic, and politically comfortable, so that they can live their life with dignity. What the Congress is talking about, we have given Paanch Nyay and 25 guarantees. And let's come to the past in 2008 also, when the world was under great economic recession. Then also the GDP of India was going, the economy of India was going at a rate of 8%. So that is like not to question the integrity, that the economic figures and how the Congress calculated, because Congress had already shown in the past how they deal and how their policies, whatever the promises, how the Manrega came earlier. There were debates and everybody was against also. The opposition was not in favor of Manrega also. But now the biggest economic, like the employment, the demand for Manrega work is highest, and the BJP government is providing the jobs to the Manrega workers. That is what this, because the government is not to earn profits. The government is made to distribute whatever is earning, whatever through the taxes to the people. Like,
okay, no, good point, Amrit, good point. You say that the government, you've given us a question to ask the other panelists. Professor Mehrotra, the Congress spokesperson, says that the government is not there to make profits, it is there to redistribute. What I want to add to her comment and ask you is that if you go down this path of redistribution, and you made that very important point that for any redistribution you need to first grow, where will the money come from? That's the question that even Tushar Gupta is asking.
So I'll give you 3 responses, sir, if I may.
Yes.
Firstly, I repeat that there have been so many economic policy mistakes in the last 10 years that has brought the growth rate down. Now, the point is, we can bring the growth rate back up to at least 8%, and that will generate much more revenues. Point 1. Point 2. I think
but we are already at 7% plus, sir. Even the RBI today has said...
Sir, may I finish? This 7% plus is highly questionable. The fact of there is a huge difference between 7 and 8. I'm talking about more than 8. Let me finish, if I might, because I began by saying I have to make 3 points. Second point, this government, when it came to power, the debt to GDP ratio was below 60%. Today, the debt to GDP ratio is, after a reduction from 91% of GDP, it has come down to 82%. From 55 lakh crores, this government has taken total government debt to 200 lakh crores. So people from this government should be the last people who should be talking about additional expenditure burdens. Thirdly, as far as the rupees 1 lakh to the poorest households are concerned, Mr. Tushar Gupta assumed that 20% of the households will be receiving this 1 lakh. Well, 22% of the households were below the poverty line 10 years ago in 2012. The BJP government keeps claiming the poverty has come down. So I'm convinced that no more than 5 to 10% in the new government will actually be given this. So the funds required will be nowhere close to what's been asked for. Secondly, on the MSP, I think most people do not fully understand what a guarantee of an MSP or legal guarantee of an MSP means. Firstly, it does not mean 100% of the crops, 23 crops, are to be purchased by the government. So that 100% Mr. Gupta was talking about, let's rule that out. Even 25%, which was the alternative that was mentioned, we can rule that out because the point is it is to be bought by private sector. And it's only when the price falls below a certain level that the government will need to intervene, and intervene intermittently, only sometimes. And on what basis is Mr. Tushar Gupta claiming that, the MSP is going to be inflated? There is a Commission for Cost and Prices. There are professional economists who are in that business, who do this. So the cost is going to be no more than 15,000 crores per annum at most. So let's be very clear that you can go on talking about without understanding the economics and try and sort of fool people, but that's not going to get you anywhere, unfortunately.
I want to
Tushar, respond to that. Tushar,
because just hold
Amrit,
on.
I'll come to you. Amrit, wait,
Because
let
earlier
Tushar
also
respond
I
and I'll
was
come
not
to you.
given the opportunity to talk. I want to talk about MSP. Being a daughter of a farmer, I want to contribute to this.
Tushar, you want to let Amrit respond and then I'll come to you. Just go ahead, Amrit, make your point, please, quickly.
As Tushar was talking about the MSP is the minimum support price. If the Congress, we are guaranteeing that we will give the MSP. If the Tushar is talking about 100% procurement, 15 lakh crore, I am just talking about what about the produce which the government is going to bring is the government is going to destroy those crops, or one government can build a structure through that employment can be generated, and government can build such a big that employment can be generated, and government can earn profits through that. And they are not
fair point. No, fair point. Let Tushar respond.
They are not going to give fire to that money.
Go
So
ahead,
please try
Tushar.
to understand, if you look from the point of view of farmer, the things are totally different. Here, the daughter of a farmer is talking.
Amrit, let's get Tushar in and I'll come back to you as well. Go ahead, Tushar, quickly.
Siddharth, since Amrit is very passionate on this subject, I hope she's realized that Congress is actually taking the BJP line on farmers in its manifesto. In its manifesto, the Congress says that the farmers will have the right to sell to anyone, anywhere. And that is what the BJP was also trying to say during the farm laws. But the Congress opposed something for 4 years, and today they put it in the manifesto. The Congress is also saying that the farmers would be required to pay a premium on the insurance that would be offered to them by the government. That's what the BJP was saying. But the protesting farmers just a couple of months back were saying that the government should be paying the premium. So all in all, Amrit would be very happy to know that the Congress is actually taking the BJP line on farmers. And ignoring the condescending tone of Mr. Mehrotra, my simple question is, are you honestly asking the state to have a disruption in the agriculture market? You are again not explaining 15,000 crore is an absolute rubbish figure. That's not going to be the cost of the government. He's talking about 25% procurement of MSP crops in terms of volume. That already happens. The government was willing to give a written guarantee for it, which the farmers rejected. No, I'm sorry. 15,000 crore number does not make sense. That the procurement annually is far bigger than that. 15,000 crore cost is not a problem. The cost is the legalizing.
Approximately 15.
MSP. How do you sponsor that? Where the money comes from? You're asking that the state should interfere when the prices go down. Why should the state disrupt the free agricultural market? If today you're asking it for the MSP crops, tomorrow someone will stand up for horticulture, then for dairy, then for poultry, then for the other cash crops that are left out. So essentially you're saying that the state should have an active participation in the supply and demand of the agricultural market. How is that feasible for anyone? I'm saying let the state not spend that money.
Tushar, let's bring in Aditi. Tushar, hold on.
No, just so that final point. I'm saying let the state not spend that money. But then you're saying that the state should interfere in the pricing of the market and let the cost be passed on to the consumers. So either you create inflation for the consumers or a fiscal deficit problem for the government. Either way, it's a suicide.
So inflationary impact and problems of fiscal deficit. Aditi, I want you to step in on, for example, the point that most of the panelists have made, including Professor Mehrotra at the very start. When the UPA introduced the Manrega scheme in 2004 with 100 days, at that time the estimate was 11 lakh crore, which was not even this, the full budget was not that size. But that is 20 years ago. We have seen what has happened to the scheme and the kind of allocations. But 20 years on, is this what the Congress hopes to come back to power on? I want the bigger picture from you. Redistributive economics at a time of significant economic challenges, both within the country, post-COVID, during COVID, even prior to that, and obviously a very, very volatile external situation. Is this what the Congress is hoping to snatch back power from the BJP?
Well, I think it is required, no, Siddharth? We saw the migration during COVID, we saw the lack of employment, we saw the degree of overemployment in agriculture at the moment, because people had such a bad time during COVID that they simply weren't ready to go back to urban jobs. So
Okay.
what Professor Mehrotra is saying is perhaps the issue, which is that if you create urban employment and if you create urban guarantees for employment, possibly rural unemployment and rural guarantees for employment will go down proportionately. I'm not an expert on this, so I don't know enough about this, and I'm candidly admitting that. But the
Right.
fact is that unemployment and overemployment in agriculture is a huge problem. And
Absolutely,
I
and
really
Aditi,
don't know.
Aditi, the larger political point that I wanted to check from you, but before I do that, my producers are reminding me of a very interesting thing that panned out during the press conference, and our colleague Mausami of India Today posed a question during this press conference on the old pension scheme, something, as our viewers would know, was used in the run-up to 3 assembly elections and those states where the Congress came to power, but there was no mention of the OPS. Listen into that very interesting question and answer that happened during the press conference earlier today.
ओपीएस को लेके लगातार जो है झंडा बुलंद किया है, तमाम सरकारें आपकी, उन्होंने ओपीएस का वादा किया था. चिदम्बरम साहब, you had promised OPS, and in Himachal and Rajasthan you implemented OPS, but in the manifesto the OPS scheme is missing. So is there a is there a introspection that it's not viable economically? Is it that?
It's not missing as such. It's very much on our minds. But please remember the developments that have taken place in the last 4 months. The government has appointed a committee headed by the Finance Secretary to review the NPS and the demand for OPS and to find a way in which the objectives of OPS can be financed by a funded pension scheme, which means the government has come around to the point of view that while the OPS delivered benefits to the pensioners, the NPS made it sustainable. Now a committee has been appointed under the Finance Secretary, and unless we receive the report of that committee and review it, it would be premature to take a stand on the OPS-NPS controversy. It's very much on our minds, and we will come out with our position once the committee's report is received.
Well, clearly the report of that committee, were the present government intending to, would have come out before the elections, but clearly it will come after the elections. So perhaps the Congress will have to continue to wait on that. Aditi, one very quick point, and this relates to the student education loan write-offs. Again, does this make sense? Is this such a huge problem of student debt? Are we importing something from the United States of America where education is so prohibitively expensive that it is a huge issue? and we are now promising that in India. What kind of impact would this have?
It's an interesting thing. It's an interesting promise because they've said a one-time write-off. I don't understand what a one-time write-off means. One time, how many years back when you took the loan, and how much money is going to be written off. I really don't know anything about this.
Okay.
Nor does anyone else, I imagine. But just on the OPS issue, Siddharth, OPS was promised by Devendra Phadnis, which is BJP, as well as in the Himachal election, as well as in Rajasthan and other places also. So clearly, this is a classical case of good politics and bad economics. I think the finance Mr. Chidambaram, the former finance minister, has kind of evaded the issue by saying the government is thinking about it, and when we come into government, we'll take a decision as and when. But the fact is that this is a problem. And,
Amrit Gill, is the Congress now avoiding it after realizing the reality? You are in power in these 3 states where OPS became an issue, and after getting there, it's been difficult for those state governments to even consider this, along with several other promises which the Congress seems to be backtracking on. So, has the Congress developed cold feet on the promise of a return to the old pension scheme? Amrit Gill, that question was for you. Has the Congress developed cold feet on the old pension?
As our finance minister P. Chidambaram ji said that it's with the committee, and committee will, when the report will come, and then we can speak up on old OPS. So right now, me speaking on anything on this is not going to work, and it's not the authentic.
Professor Mehrotra wants to say something on this. Professor?
Yeah, you see, it's a very straightforward matter. It is true that the OPS is going to burden the government, whether it's center or state. On the other hand, there is something to be said for the NPS because it is a fully funded scheme. The OPS is not a fully funded scheme. This was the original design flaw, whoever started the OPS. Now, the point is that it now has to be finessed, that we need to bring in the strong points of the OPS as well as the strong points of the NPS into a scheme which actually looks ahead and is fiscally sustainable. So, Chidambaram has made a nuanced point. It is only as it should be. Any, sensible, reasonable shadow finance minister would do exactly the same.
Absolutely. Okay, Professor Mehrotra, we'll have to leave it at that because there are so many other elements to unpack in the Congress manifesto, and through the show we have tried to keep the focus on the fiscal impact. Viewers, as I let you go and thank my panelists here, just some numbers for the financial year that just ended a few days ago. 35 lakh crore tax target for fiscal year 2024 is what the government had hoped at the beginning of the financial year, and it's been met. We have seen close to 20% growth as far as direct taxes is concerned, and roughly 11.7% as far as GST is concerned. Very good tax collections. But if you were to go by the numbers, and it's hard to put a specific number in the manifesto promises, but Tushar Gupta gave us one number of 15 lakh crore. You can cut it whichever way, but it's clear that as far as the impact of any such list of promises which we have seen in the state as well as the center, it is going to continue to burden the fiscal situation. We can of course perhaps manage it, but that would depend on growth, and we'll have to also wait for the BJP's list of promises, whether they decide to respond to the Congress freebies with their own list of poll promises. We'll come back when that happens. Until then, goodbye, and thank you very much once again for tuning in on the show. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.
the domestic